Hey everybody, welcome to Fantasy R&R. This is your host Ryan.
And I'm Rob.
And this is the NFL Playoff Conference Championships.
This is Fantasy with Rob and Ryan, Fantasy R&R.
After an absolutely catastrophic weekend for our second season rosters and my personal pick'ems, we're on the heels of one of the most underwhelming conference championship matchups the NFL has ever seen. I'm not sure if I could be any less excited for this weekend besides a couple of the quarterbacks playing. Rob, let's just get started with our reaction to the divisional matchups we saw, starting with the Bengals and Titans. Pick the Bengals to win this one. It's the only one I got right this weekend. Start off really slow as a defensive struggle, Burrow getting sacked all the time, Derrick Henry not really making a huge impact during the game. Ryan Tannehill, second postseason in a row, ending on an interception. What are some of your thoughts right off the bat about that game?
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. Ryan Tannehill, as we had stated in the previous podcast, just can't make the big throw. And lo and behold, he started the game with an interception, had an interception in the middle of the game, and ended the game with an interception. I think the Titans have got to move on from Ryan Tannehill if they want to make waves in the playoffs. And Joe Burrow is a good quarterback. It's pretty much everything that we stated with our predictions in just last week's podcast.
We were talking a little bit, just not to get too off track, before we got into this podcast, we're on the phone, we're talking a little bit about nobody wants to listen to our shitty little stupid fucking podcast, but for some reason these other people have jobs. Just going over some of the news from that Bengals game, I wanted to make sure that I got, the quarter right where that interception happened. We'll talk about that, but right here it's this guy that works for Sports Illustrated said that Joe Burrow threw a short pass to running back LaMichael Pirine. That's Samaje Perine, you fucking idiot. You work for Sports Illustrated. Get the goddamn name right. So anyway, Perine, he misses that ball, gets tipped up a little bit, and Titans safety, Amani Hooker, runs in. He is dragging that ball along the ground. And we heard, I think it was Pelissaro, I don't remember exactly who was on, the announcer call, that said that looked like it was going to be overturned. That did not look like an interception. I said the same thing. I'm like, if it's dragging on the ground, what does it matter? What does any of this matter? We got, our announcers during the game saying, well, he had control of the ball before it hit the ground there and dragged across the ground. That's absolutely ridiculous. He was holding it for maybe a second. The ball hit the ground. That's an incomplete pass. It's not an interception. I don't know how that went the Titans' way. If that was a wide receiver in the end zone or even a wide receiver on the field on offense diving for that, they would have overturned it in a second. We got wide receivers catching balls in the end zone, touching 2 feet and then falling down and the ball juggling out of their hands after they've already made foot contact with the end zone, and they don't call those touchdowns. Where are we here in the NFL where this still makes sense? Where we've got running backs who just need to barely get the ball across that little white line, but we're putting that kind of stock where we're allowed to have the ground now help make an interception. What do you make of that play?
I just think it was another terrible call by the refs. We keep seeing it, game in and game out, and there was just no need for that call, but somehow, some way, it made it. When we talk further into that Packers-49ers game, we saw something eerily similar called reversal, and there's no consistency whatsoever. It's completely infuriating just being a fan of the sport that these calls just aren't called accurately a majority of the time. It's always a 50-50 call.
You know what? Why should I even be surprised? We've got this guy saying that was LaMichael Pirine. You know what? Maybe I should stop trashing on him. To his credit, when there's a play that bad on a football field, you generally associate it with the Jets, so maybe he got confused, LaMichael Pirine, Samaje Perine. One last thing, though, about that game, Tannehill now. So we've seen him in multiple postseasons. To be honest, he's kind of turned his career around, and he's helped the Titans get a lot of wins that we otherwise thought they wouldn't have had. But he's not getting the job done here. I wouldn't even say he's on the level of Tony Romo not getting the job. Tannehill doesn't seem like he's going to really be the answer going forward, but he's on a massive contract through 2023. They can't release him. Do you think he gets traded somewhere this offseason?
Who wants to take him? No, I don't think so. I think the Titans are just going to continue rolling him out in hopes that he can eventually make the throw. But just like the Kirk Cousins of the world that we've talked about before, even Phillip Rivers, I go as far as to that. It's just like these guys are game facilitators and can't make the throw when their back's against the wall. That last throw for that interception was just horrible. There was just coverage was everywhere. It wasn't even freaking close. And that's what separates now, as I said, the Joe Burrows from the Ryan Tannehill drum. Joe Burrow's doing it in his second year. Tannehill for 2 years in a row is just pulling a Tannehill, and it's got to change.
Next game here, 49ers and Packers. This was, probably unexpected. I mean, we talked about in the last podcast, Aaron Rodgers just keeps losing to the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo in general. I don't know what's going on here. I was very upset watching that game because this time I did think the Packers could pull it off. I think 49ers roster just kind of overall looks weak on offense, besides a couple of players, and then their defense is really what impresses me a little bit more. I think Jimmy G does not win these games. They win in spite of him, and I was expecting the Packers to pull this off this time, but Aaron Rodgers, he's acting like he and Davante Adams are the only people on that field, and that's not how you win football games. What do you make of that particular loss? I mean, especially when you saw Jimmy G basically trying to throw the game away at the end.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think San Francisco's offense scored 3 points. Is that correct? I mean, Jimmy G had an interception. Congratulations. But I just think it was a complete inept coaching staff. I mean, that's what I blame it on at this point, because, how do you not get the ball down the field with the talent that they have? And do so succeedingly. And I agree with you with Aaron Rodgers, especially in that second half. It was just the Davante Adams show at that point. I've said it before. I think Aaron Rodgers, when Mercedes Lewis had that fumble, it wasn't his fault. It was punched out, he just stops going to these guys. We saw with Adam Lazard, I think, had 1 reception. You're not going to get the job done, of course, but the play calling in general was just atrocious in the second half for the Packers. And then the block punt for a touchdown. This game's over. This game is one of the worst games I've ever seen. And, you could say the elements and whatnot, but I think this solely, this is solely on the shoulders of Matt LaFleur, their head coach.
Well, a lot of people, in our second season league took a lot of Packers. I did not, and it was really the next couple games where things fell apart for me. But, we were talking. You've actually mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Where does he go next year? You were thinking maybe you actually mentioned the Saints. This will tie into something else we'll talk about. Do you think he goes to the Saints? Do you think he goes to the Steelers? It sounds like, you've talked about, maybe the Steelers are a contender if he goes there. What do you think is his best option if he decides not to retire?
Well, I definitely think he's not going to retire, and I think he's done with the Packers. I think this is the nail in the coffin, my God-honest opinion, and I think it's going to be Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's looking for a quarterback. They probably don't want to trade up for a quarterback who's, kind of middling options in the draft coming into this year. And I think if he wants to win now, which he's not getting any younger, I know that's very cliche, I think Pittsburgh would be the perfect landing spot. There's players everywhere on that offense that would just become immediate upgrades to what he has in Green Bay. We know Pittsburgh's willing to make the trades. They're willing to sign the players, and they have an immaculate draft class year in and year out. I think if he wants to go somewhere with a great coach and Mike Tomlin, it's going to be Pittsburgh. And I think that would be a phenomenal landing spot for him. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. So what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was actually under the impression that Rodgers may not go anywhere until he came out with these comments about I don't want to be on a team that's rebuilding. It's well, bro, you weren't on a team that was rebuilding. You're on a team that's been in the playoffs multiple years in a row, and you're failing to get the job done. So I'm not sure if this really matters at this point where he goes. I think Rodgers is, stood up for him in some situations. I think he's got an ego problem that he can't transcend at this point. He's dating Hollywood actresses, NASCAR drivers, and he's just, he's going that route of, that just off the deep end celebrity instead of being a football player. His brother has been on, multiple reality TV shows. He's got drama stirred up from that. I think the dude's just mentally different than some people, and I have no problem what his views are, politically or on, COVID or the vaccine or anything like that, whatever. But when you get on a football field and you start thinking that you're the savior of that team, but then you keep coming up short, I mean, you got to look in the mirror at some point. Talking about the Saints, though, Sean Payton, you just imparted this knowledge before we started this podcast. He's going to be leaving the Saints. So even if Rodgers goes over there, you're talking about taking on a whole new coach, probably a young coach, might be in the same Matt LaFleur situation there. It's going to be interesting to see, but alas, Packers lost that one, 49ers move on. The Italian sedan, Jimmy G, as you like to call him, He's the one that's going to be in this NFC Championship once again. Did it a couple of years ago. So let's talk about Rams-Bucks. What a crazy fucking game. I picked the Bucks to win this. I picked the Bucks to go to the Super Bowl, potentially win the Super Bowl, even if it was against the Bills. And now that story's over, we saw them down 27-3, and Brady did not look like himself. He threw a bad pick early in the game. We saw some crazy stuff like Ndamukong Suh getting in the face of Matt Stafford and pointing at him, drawing a taunting penalty, totally ruins a stop on third down. We saw Scotty Miller doing a lot of the leg work like we thought might happen because Mike Evans is dropping balls, and Gronkowski can't get open for the first half of that game, and it looks like they're absolutely going to get buried. The Rams just piling on, but then the Rams start to make these mistakes. How crazy were the last 2 quarters of that game? That was reminiscent of the Falcons.
Yeah, it was freaking wild. I was just watching that with my jaw open and just laughing. I was like, what are you guys doing? I remember vividly, the Rams just start wasting the clock. What they were doing in the first half, that game plan, they decided to get away from in the second half, where Stafford could have just lined up, handed over to, it doesn't even, whoever, just run the clock out like you were doing in the first half. Keep Tom Brady off the field. Throws that throw to Cooper Kupp, and he fumbles, and they recover to score a touchdown later on. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, okay, don't do that again. They line up to hike it to Stafford to throw again. They're being aggressive. Hikes it over his head. It was like something out of a movie. And then the next possession, Cam Akers fumbles for a second time. I'm like, oh my God, this is happening. And, you and I were texting throughout the game. I was like, this is Tom Brady. He always will have a shot. And ultimately, falls short. But still, like, that game in the second half was a movie script.
Yeah,
I have no other words
nuts
to describe it. That was just a movie script. It was crazy.
I gotta say too, it's interesting what happened with that Stafford, quote unquote fumble. It was really the center fumbling it, if anything else. But his wife talking about how he had been doing a lot of silent counts because of the crowd noise he deals with, especially at that San Francisco game before the season ended. Maybe that's what was going on in Tampa. It was just too loud. He can't hear, can't communicate with the team. They're on the silent count, and there's miscommunication between him and the center, and they just hiked it at the wrong time. Another clear indication of miscommunication was that ending play where Scotty Miller kind of stops in open space real abruptly. It wasn't his fault. He's trying to tell Brady, hey, I'm open, and he was in a good spot to make the first down and an easy catch. And Tom Brady, it's almost like he was expecting him to keep running, and he just threw it way ahead of him, and it was kind of closer to the defenders than Scotty Miller even was. So I'm not sure what happened there. I was just kind of left at the end, I was like, oh no, that's the final play. That was it. That was their chance. I thought that was, one of the craziest things. Is Tom Brady done? Is he coming back? Is he just saying that he's got to talk to the family because he wants to appease Gisele Bündchen? Do you think he's just going to, pull a ha-ha, neener at the end of that and come back anyway?
I just think he's going to come back. And a lot of people that are like, is it over? I'm like, we said this, not we, but, the pundits out there in the world have said this too many times. I think he's got to come back and just give it one more shot.
Bills Chiefs. Pick the Bills to win this. A lot of my second season players were Bills. They're all eliminated now. Crazy game as well. Josh Allen looked absolutely spectacular, and I hate this guy, and I can't believe the strides he's taken in his career. What's really nuts is I love Mahomes. You know this. He's probably my favorite quarterback since Manning, favorite quarterback since Favre. I'm just a huge fan of this guy, and I wanted to see the Bills win that game. I thought they deserved it. Something seemed off. I'm not sure what it was about the Chiefs' rhythm, if the Bills' defense is just struggling because of losses of Tre'Davious White, and the way we've talked about how they're trending down, the Chiefs' defense was trending up. But that game was, not only closer than I thought it was going to be, the Chiefs end up pulling it off. Your initial thoughts on how that played out?
Yeah, again, going back to last week's podcast, I just said to myself, I think this game's going to be freaking amazing. And lo and behold, it was. And I'll just put it out there now. I think this is going to be better than what the Super Bowl will end up panning out. I think that game was an instant classic. I think Josh Allen against Mahomes, we're going to see this many of times for the next few years, as long as they stay on their respective teams, which I believe they will. Once again, you're talking about last 2 quarters. That fourth quarter in that game was just amazing. It's just great football. It was a lot of fun, and of course, it ends with the coin toss and everything, which I believe we're going to talk about a little further. Hell of a game, man. That was two greats going at it. I'm just gonna say now, two future Hall of Famers for sure.
Absolutely impressed with the way Josh Allen handled that. I mean, he was cold as ice on that last drive, just like a stone cold killer. Just reminded me of every great quarterback, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, those kind of guys, Brett Favre, those clutch quarterbacks that just come in at the end and finish the job. He really should have, taken that game. His defense kind of let him down. His special teams let him down at the end of that game. Tyler Bass especially, too. It's like kicking that ball into the end zone. I mean, I thought they were not going to kick too deep. That way you get maybe a 5-second run back. It's just insane that they could have ran more time off and didn't. So it begs the question, these NFL overtime rules, nobody in the Chiefs' kingdom was complaining after this game. But if you remember a couple of years ago when they lost to the Patriots, they were complaining about the same thing, is that their quarterback didn't get a chance to answer, and it was literally all decided with a coin flip. So when you've got a team just going tit for tat the whole matchup, but then you don't give the second guy his shot in overtime, it seems like you get cheated out of something here. Do you think this is going to change the rules where it's like we give the other team at least one more possession, whether it was a field goal or a touchdown?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it needs to change, because that's the only kind of caveat or stain on that game was the fact that Josh Allen didn't get his shot. I mean, keep this rule through the regular season, sure. But the playoffs, man, you got to at least give the opponent a chance to score a touchdown. Give them 4 downs. If they don't convert the 4 downs, then rightfully so, Chiefs win. But this needs to change, especially if we're going to see more Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen playoff games down the line.
All right, let's get into the conference championship games this weekend. Bengals at Chiefs. Spread on this one. Chiefs got to win by more than 7 points to cover the spread. So you got your Chiefs at -7. You got your Bengals at +7. Team to win, obviously, is the Chiefs. A bet of $100 is going to win $260 if the Bengals win. A bet of $333 only yields you $100 if the Chiefs win. So obviously we got Chiefs at -333. You got Bengals at +260. Over/under for this is 54. So you could bet 110 to win $100 on an under a 54 here. Personally, I could totally see the under happening in this situation. I actually would not mind if the Bengals won, but I'm gonna have to pick the Chiefs here myself personally. Like you've talked about a couple of times, it's real obvious that, the Bengals, not at full speed in a lot of their roster, but their offensive line is failing even when it's healthy. Burrow's getting sacked a lot. Chiefs defense has been on the uprise. I think as long as the ball gets back into Mahomes' hands, he's going to be deadly enough to where every possession for the Bengals is going to count. And if they are getting sacked on 3rd down, it's going to be a long day for the Bengals. I'm going to go ahead and take the Bengals, and I'm going to say maybe, we're talking about a score about 31-20 here for the Chiefs. I'm sorry, I better take the Chiefs, but 31-20.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that you said and what we've already talked about. That Bengals O-line is just atrocious. And yeah, I mean, even if they sack him, let's just say 4 times, of the 9 times he was sacked last week, I just think the Chiefs are going to run away with this. And then come 4th quarter, they're just going to be running whatever running back they want. And I would go under, too. I think that's a lot of points. And I think the Chiefs are going to take this easily, especially with the home field advantage.
49ers at Rams. Spread on this one. Rams must win by 4 points or more to cover the spread. -3.5 for the Rams, +3.5 for the 49ers. Team to win is the Rams. Bet of 100 is going to win you 150 if the Niners win. Bet of 175 wins you 100 if the Rams win. So obviously Rams at -175. 49ers at +150. Over/under for this one, 46. See, I think that could be pulled off pretty easily for the over. I think the 49ers have what it takes to score on defense. I think that Deebo Samuel is a running game. Like, to kind of quote that idiot fucking reporter Pablo Torres talking about the Carolina Christian McCaffreys, they should be. Well, this team actually is the San Francisco Deebo Samuels. Jimmy G is really doing nothing to win these games. I think it's all in their creative offense, running a lot of these, bootleg plays and stuff like that. But, the Rams at this point, they're a high-powered, high-octane vertical offense. And I think that they're going to go just as hard as it did on the Buccaneers. Going to see a lot of scoring in this one. I think this one's going to be closer than the Bengals and Chiefs. I'm going to take the Rams here.
Yeah, I'm just looking at strictly offense. I just think the Rams' offense is way better. Their defense has definitely improved. I mean, we saw it against Tampa. They can do it again. If they can do it against Kyler Murray and Tom Brady, they can do it to the Italian sedan. I can guarantee it. I think the Rams are going to win this one. I think they're going to win easily. I think both these games are going to be kind of boring in my opinion. Again, I think it's too much Rams offensive and defensive powers. I think we're going to be looking at a Chiefs-Rams Super Bowl come a couple weeks from now.
And everyone's got to remember the 49ers and Rams just played in Week 18 before the playoffs even started. That did go down to the wire, 27-24. 49ers did pull it off. That was the final in OT. So it hit 51 points there. I could totally see it happening again, but this time I am going to pick the Rams. They're making believers out of me little by little. I think Stafford is your X factor here. If you've got Stafford on a team, he should beat the team with Jimmy Garoppolo on the team. And it didn't necessarily feel that way about every matchup, but Rodgers I did. So we'll have to see if Jimmy G proves everyone wrong. But, for now, that's the picks. I've been wrong thus far. I can be wrong again. Once again, everybody, this was Rob and Ryan with Fantasy R&R. We'll see you next time.